The State of the Union is strong. Its politicians, however, are stupid and bought off by everybody from oil billionaires like the Koch brothers and Saudi sheikhs to transnational corporations and defense contractors, which is problem one. Our Supreme Court has said that money is the same thing as speech. It's not. It's money. Our Supreme Court has also said that corporations are people. They are not. They're voluntary associations. The Bill of Rights was not written to protect the East India Company. It was written to protect individual people. So we need to amend our Constitution to clearly and explicitly say corporations are not people and money is not speech. Problem two is at the core of why we have government. Why did those guys 2.5 centuries ago put their lives on the line and fight and die to create the United States? And why have people fought and died over and over and over again in the intervening years to keep this nation alive? Jefferson put it quite simply in the Declaration of Independence that governments are instituted among men to secure the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So the question, why do we have government? Easy answer: to provide life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Does that mean government should be hysterical about its budget deficit when there's no problem created by that deficit? No, that's stupid. Does it mean that government should be hysterical about how much it's spending when our government is spending about half as much of its GDP as most other developed nations, and our own spending compared to ourselves is at levels lower than most of the past half century? No, that's stupid too. These are manufactured hysterias to get our government to do things that will further destroy the middle class and enrich the banksters and the billionaires. They have nothing to do with the purpose of government. If the job of the government is to protect the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what the Constitution repeatedly refers to as the general welfare, then the real issue government should be laser focused on is obvious. It's jobs. In 1944, President Franklin Roosevelt suggested that we should put into law a second Bill of Rights that would codify what he had already been doing for a decade with the New Deal. And among the most important of those was the right to a job. When capitalism fails to provide for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, when the so-called free market fails to provide for the general welfare, which happens constantly because these are not the job of capitalism, then logically those responsibilities fall to government. It's why we created our government. And that means making the government the employer of last resort. There are over $2.5 trillion worth of infrastructure repair we need just to bring ourselves back to being in the same shape we were in when Ronald Reagan became president and began ignoring infrastructure. That's a hell of a lot of jobs. Additionally, we need to be building out 21st century versions of our four most important forms of infrastructure. Those four are our intellectual infrastructure, our communications infrastructure, our energy infrastructure, and our transportation infrastructure. To build out our intellectual infrastructure, we need to go back to our government policies of free education. These were first proposed by Thomas Jefferson when he created the University of Virginia as a free college, then advanced by Abraham Lincoln when he granted huge swaths of land to create tuition-free land-grant colleges across America. They saw a large fulfillment during the Truman and Eisenhower years with the GI Bill, which raised the percentage of Americans who had attended college from around 6% to over 20%. That intellectual infrastructure built in the 1950s by Truman and Eisenhower was the basis of the invention explosion of the 60s, 70s, and 80s in the United States that brought us the modern computer age. It's time to fully fund our public schools and to make college and trade schools free for any high school graduate who wants to attend. To build out our communications infrastructure, we need to lay a national fiber optic internet system and open it up to competition. Any company can use it, so we can have competitive pricing of high-speed broadband like Europe, Japan, South Korea, and other countries do, where you can get literally internet access at 10 times faster than in the United States for about $20 a month. To build our energy infrastructure, we need to take a lesson from Germany and backstop loans to banks to loan every homeowner in America enough to put solar panels on their homes. Meanwhile, we need to build a national energy smart grid to handle all this new and localized power. Additionally, we need to backstop local communities and states in building wind farms, solar farms, wave power installations, and whatever other forms of renewable energy are appropriate to those communities. And like Europe, we need to make all of this competitive by making the carbon industry pay for their own externalities. the cost of the military to protect their oil lines, the cost of health care to pay for the cancers they cause, the cost of environmental destruction. We make them pay for this with a simple carbon tax, which then also instantly makes renewable energies less expensive than 19th century fossil fuels, as has happened in Australia in the last 2 years. To build out our transportation infrastructure, we need to take a lesson from Europe and China and build a national high-speed rail system. As CSX, the leading supplier of rail-based freight transportation in North America, loves to remind us in their TV ads, they can move a ton of freight, or a ton of people, over 500 miles on a single gallon of fuel. We once had a rail system that was the envy of the world, and it was the staging ground for our industrial revolution. We need to build it anew. And all of this brings us to the third opportunity, which is also a threat to our great union, and that's global warming. Scientists tell us that our current burn rate of fossil fuels will raise the temperature of our planet 5 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. That, in turn, will warm our oceans enough to release trillions of tons of methane hydrate that's currently frozen along our continental shelves, and those greenhouse gases will raise the temperature of our planet another 5 degrees. That's 10 degrees Celsius total. The last time that happened was 250 million years ago, when continents were being torn apart and a massive lava flow that covered most of what's now called Siberia raised the Earth's temperature 5 degrees, triggering a melt of the methane crystals that raised it another 5 degrees. That 10-degree increase in temperature is what geologists now refer to as the Permian extinction. 95% of all life on Earth, both on land and sea, died. It was the worst of all the 5 major extinctions our planet has seen. It took 80,000 years for life to bounce back on Earth and ushered in the age of the dinosaurs. We are creating our own Permian extinction, and we need to stop it now. That carbon tax would be a great first step, and there's much more we can do beyond that. So that's the state of our union. We are not broke. We are the richest nation in the world. We don't have a deficit or a spending problem. We have a jobs problem. And we are not any longer going to let trickle-down economics turn us into a third world nation. We're going to rebuild and then update our critical infrastructures. And in the process, we will save ourselves from making ourselves extinct. These are the challenges before us, and we can meet them if you, the people, will get behind the effort now. Time's a wasted.